Hello everyone. Hi. Building relationship with a child, a happy, confident relationship with a child is the number one most important thing you can do, whether it's working with your own child or supporting a child either in or outside of school. Having that rapport and that trusting relationship is the first thing that you have to develop, and I'm going to tell you why. My name's Norma Jean. I'm the founder of Time to Shine Teaching and Coaching. And the last few weeks I've been talking to you more about academic support and things you can do to help your child learn and be successful academically. But you may or may not know I'm also a behavior interventionist, and I have had massive successes with children with problematic or challenging behaviors, kids that struggle with self-regulation, etc. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today, and the reason why is I've had a couple of parents come to me and say, oh, my kid, I can't get them to do this, or they're doing this and I don't know how to stop it. And it's always a little more challenging when it's the parent, because we're wearing more than one hat as a parent, whereas, you know, if you're working, supporting the child within the school system or privately, that is your focus always, right? But that said, it's just as important for parents to develop that same kind of relationship, that trusting relationship with a child, because it's only through them trusting you that they can come to trust themselves. And that trust in themselves, that confidence, that self-worth and self-esteem, that's where success is born from. So let me tell you a little bit about what I mean. And I've got so many thoughts in my head, I'm having trouble getting them all sorted. But let me tell you specifically about a couple of kids I've worked with that had really challenging behaviors. And I'll reckon it with this. So when you're teaching your child to tie their shoes, it's way easier to just tie their shoes for them. But where's the lesson in that, right? What are they learning from you doing everything for them? They're not, right? And I always say that my job is to work myself out of a job, right? I want to create and help a child become successful on their own. So, for instance, I worked with a child that he was young, he is autistic, and he had some really problematic behaviors that were self-harming. And you know, I recognized that I wasn't just going to be able to stop that behavior. First of all, I had to come up with a replacement behavior, right? Something that I could take that bad behavior that was harming him and he could do something else instead. So that's what we did. And that took a while, right? I'm not going to say that happened overnight. That happened over a series of many months. And then that behavior wasn't exactly what I wanted. It was still not great. So then it was, okay, now that he is consistently doing that behavior instead of the really harmful one, how can we improve? So then we graduated slowly to the next thing that he could do when he was feeling agitated. And eventually, over the period of a couple years, right, it didn't happen quickly, but it happened through consistent effort. We were able to take a very harmful behavior and turn it into one that was perfectly safe for him and allowed him to find a way to regulate on his own without my help. And, you know, the thing is that if we don't believe in kids, then they have no reason to believe in themselves. If we don't set high expectations for kids, then they are not going to set expectations for themselves. Most people don't, right? Even adults don't do that. So it is that unwavering, unshakable belief in a child's ability that makes me very successful with children. And I'm trying to think of another few things that I wanted to talk about. Yes, okay, so building relationship. Positive reinforcement is the key, number one, right? And that can look different for every child depending on what it is that is a positive reinforcement for them. But usually it's just praise and acknowledgement, recognition of every time that they're successful and that they've done something that you're hoping they'll do. And, you know, I remember working with one child that, you know, all I was really doing was I picked one target behavior that I was trying to help him with, which was not banging his desk against the kids beside him and disrupting the class. And so every time I caught him listening or working without doing that, I had sticky notes, and I'd just go and I'd put one on his desk, and it would say something like, "Way to go, man. Good job. I love the way you're doing such and such," and happy faces and hearts. And he would just light up inside. And eventually he became confident in himself that he could control that behavior, right? Now, on the flip side of that, I think just as importantly, and this is where I might have some people disagreeing with me, and that's okay, is that there are negative consequences to actions as well. And to me, that's just a fact of life. And it happens to us as adults. We all make our choices, right? And when we do, the response is going to be different, whether it was a good choice or a bad choice. Well, I don't see how that's any different for children, right? So first, after I've built that relationship, after I've shown them that I have complete faith in them and their abilities, after I've proven to them that they can control themselves, that they can do what's best, then I will introduce the negative consequences. It's like, it's your choice, right? I don't control your behavior. I can't control anybody's behavior but my own. And the same is true for you. You control your behavior. You control your choices. It's up to you. But here's the consequences, right? If you make this good choice, this is going to happen. If you make this other choice that's not so good and maybe harmful to yourself or others or disruptive or whatever, well, then there's going to be a negative consequence. And it might be blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I had one child that just would not stop banging his chair, banging his chair. It was like driving everybody crazy. And, we talked a lot about self-control, and he was able to control himself in other areas. So the fact that he was able to do that showed me and him that he did have self-control. So then it was like, well, listen, here's the consequence for making good choices around this, right? You're going to get to stay seated with your friends and but if you make a bad choice, well, the negative consequences, if you can't control your chair, then I have to take your chair. You can just stand. So all it took was that happening one time where he had to stand. Did he stand the whole day? Of course not. He stood for like 2 minutes and then he got his chair back. But the point is that I think it's our responsibility as their parents and their teachers to teach them that for every action, there is a reaction, right? For every choice, there is a consequence. It has to be a logical consequence. It has to fall in line with, whatever it is they're doing. Is there scolding? No, I never had to scold. Shaming? Absolutely not. Never in a million years. Just very calm, kind, logical. If you do this, well, this is what's going to have to happen. Do you understand? So another, for instance, was a child who loved to have his finger up his nose. And you know what? That's kind of acceptable in 5, 6, 7-year-olds. But once they get to be 9, 10, 11, it's not acceptable. Not only is it unsanitary, but it's going to cause them problems in their social circles. And we don't want that. So this child was very brilliant. And so I did a little research. I printed off a sheet of the 10 top reasons you shouldn't pick your nose. And we went through them all. And he fully understood all the reasons that he shouldn't do that, why it was bad. And then we talked about, okay, well, let's talk about why you do it. What does it feel like? Does it make you feel like, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get to the bottom of why this is important. And for him, it was a sensory issue. And I'm like, okay, well, I totally get that, but you still can't do it. So what can we do instead? So then we taught him to use a Kleenex. He could still put his finger up there, but he used a Kleenex. And then it was hands in the mouth. Okay, well, here's all the same reasons why you shouldn't do that. It's not good for you. It's not good for the people around you. Why are you doing it? Does it feel good? Do you like to? So then we replaced that behavior. He liked the wetness on his fingers. He liked the way his fingers slid around in the water from the saliva. So then it was, okay, well, how can we replicate that, get you the satisfaction that you need for that, but keep your hands out of your mouth? So we just had a dish with a wet sponge in his desk, and he could touch that whenever he felt the need for that sensory satisfaction. And eventually he didn't need that any longer. I know that there are some people, educators and parents out there. I think parents are have a particularly hard time when they have a child who is special needs or is facing challenges. We all have a tendency as a parent to do for our children, right? We don't want to trust that they can do it themselves. And when our child struggles, it makes it even harder for us to relinquish that responsibility and give it back to them. But it is something that we have to do, because how do we teach kids how to be self-sufficient, how to be confident that they can work out problems, how to create resilience, if we don't offer them the opportunity to come up against obstacles or to feel frustration, right? Those are, again, facts of life. These are things that we experience as adults, as teens. I'm enjoying my garden right now because it's nice and cool. There's a little breeze here. It's so hot in the house. But where was I? Yeah. So if we don't give them the opportunity to experience difficulties, challenges, frustration, then they will not develop the ability to deal with those things, right? Now, that doesn't mean we're just abandoning them and leaving them on their own. It means that we talk about what they're experiencing. We give a name to what they're experiencing. We offer to assist them. We help them, but we don't do for them. Do you understand the difference? Like, I really do believe that we're not doing kids any favors when we do that. And I could go on and on and on with lists of children that I've supported in the last 20 years where I do things that other support workers do not do. They want to just think that they have to do for. And I go, I do with. I help with, right? And I don't really care how challenged a child is. All kids can learn. Every child can learn, and what they're learning, how long it's going to take, it's all going to be different for every kid, the same way it is with every adult, right? We all learn differently. We all take a different amount of time to learn something, different stages in our learning. It's the same for children. And I was working at one school, and there was a little fella who had a lot of challenges, and he was nonverbal, which made it even more challenging because he couldn't tell us what was, bothering him. But he was able to display his feelings quite nicely. And so he had to give up a space that he had come to know as his. And suddenly he had to share it with other children. And not just that, but he had to share it with children that came in and they were noisy because it was like a calm down space. And it irritated him, and he was frustrated by it. And to show that irritation and frustration, he started hitting people just randomly, like kids walking past him in the hall, whack, he'd hit them. And he had some strength behind him, and he was hurting people. And it took me 3 months to convince his EA that wasn't okay. It didn't matter that he himself had all these challenges, that he himself was feeling frustrated and annoyed. I get it. Everybody has those feelings. But we can't act out on them by hitting people. So let's teach him a better way to deal with those feelings, and that by doing it like that there had to be a negative consequence to that. And so I finally convinced her that, okay, listen, if we're in that room and he starts hitting people because he's frustrated, he has to leave the room. Right? He can't stay in the room if he's doing that. Show him the pictures, explain it to him. There was nothing wrong with his receptive language. He understood everything really well. But he just can't stay, right? That's not okay. We can't tolerate that kind of behavior. And so it took 6 school days, I think. And that was it. It was completely done. He never hit again. But it was only because I completely believed that child was capable of learning, that he learned, right? So anyways, I could probably ramble on this subject forever and ever because I have a million examples of how this has worked beautifully. And again, I would say that more importantly is positive reinforcement. Always praise a child every time they say or do something and we have a tendency not to do that, right? We notice the bad behaviors. It's really important that we notice and praise the good behaviors, the attempts at everything. Good try. I can see you're trying. I'm so proud of you. That sort of stuff. But then there does come a time when there has to be logical consequences for when they make bad choices, right? Just like there is for us. So anyways, I would love to hear what you have to say on this topic, because we all think differently, and I'm always open to learning and hearing what other people's opinions are. Feel free to put a message or a comment down below, or private message me. I'm happy to meet with parents or with other educators if you have a specific thing that you'd like to learn a little bit more about, or talk about, or just dialogue with me about. I offer like a 20-minute free consultation. Just get a hold of me either through my website, timetoshineteaching.com, or you can message here. And let's talk. We're all teachers. We're all learners. I love learning from other people. I love hearing about other people's experiences. I love sharing mine. And happy Thursday, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy this lovely summer weather.